But that is not typical of people with DID. Do you have gaps in your memory? Are there things that you don't remember doing? My question to people always is not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you. They all have a function. They all have a very specific role. They literally can wake up and it's like, oh my God, it's like a village hall in my head. Who are all these people talking to me? Hello everybody, I'm Catriona Morten. I'm a sensomotor psychotherapist. And today what I'd like to talk about is DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder, is it a real thing or not? But before I jump into that, if you're enjoying these videos, then please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, because it really helps us get our message out to loads more of you. DID. This is quite a controversial issue, and it's something that's relatively new in the kind of psychiatric world. And it was a set of diagnoses on a spectrum that were put together. We're now up to the DSM-5. The DSM are a group of people, mainly psychiatrists and doctors, that come together and agree on a list of criteria that then go into the diagnostic manual that is the DSM. I see DID discussed a lot on feeds that come up on my YouTube channel and, you know, from different posts and different platforms of people discussing the merits of it. And I've also heard an awful lot of therapists say, well, I've been doing this work for 20 years and I've never come across it. And I know how difficult that is for people who have DID to hear. And do I think it's real? Yes, I do. I have many clients over the years that have had DID, so quite a lot of them in the clinic that I used to run and in my private practice. And it is a structural dissociative disorder. Don't really like that word, but that's what it's called. And when we've had years and years of abuse, then we have to find a way of dealing with that. And our brain and our body are really, really clever and adaptive. And what they'll do is section certain things off into a part of themselves. And that part will be able to carry out whatever functions is needed. And it allows the other parts of the self to sometimes be completely unaware of these things. It structures them off in a place that they're quite separate from each other. Now, DID has a number of different presentations. I've seen people who have huge switches, and those switches can come on really quickly. So you can be in conversation, talking to someone, and something happens, something gets triggered, and switch. And you're just aware that you're with somebody with a completely different energy, a very different look, and a different way of operating and being. And I know when I first started how disconcerting that was. Some people with DID, their parts, their structural dissociative parts, actually have no clue about each other. I've known people who have been vegetarians all their life and can open up their fridge and it's full of meat. A part of them isn't a vegetarian. And for a lot of people with DID, what tends to happen is it doesn't show up. It works incredibly well. And later on in life, things just start to come up. Either memories start to come up and the different parts then emerge with the memories, or for some people, they literally can wake up and it's like, oh my God, it's like a village hall in my head. Who are all these people talking to me? Like I say, some people's parts have no memory and no knowledge of the others. And for some people, they can observe other parts coming in, talking to them, you know, doing certain jobs, certain functions, but they're very aware that this is a different part and they're getting on with normal life. Self is very present to it. For some people, their parts come up with all of the awful things that they've experienced. because those parts have kept those memories. They're the ones that went through those experiences, so that the rest of the self doesn't even have to have an awareness of what's going on, because it would be very, very difficult to be either involved in any kind of cults or sex trafficking or, significant abuse or even extreme violence, and to carry that into the normal life. How do you function in school with all of that going on? How do you function at university? University can be a time that DID starts to emerge, because we move away from home to a completely different set of circumstances and friends, and these parts want to come up and reveal themselves. And they don't do it to make life difficult. They do it because they want some kind of healing. Now, what healing looks like for DID isn't, as with any issue to do with mental health, trauma, attachment, it's not one linear thing. And I know for a lot of people in the DID community, because people have started kind of reaching out and finding others who are in the same circumstance, and that can be a massive sense of validation and belonging. And a lot of people in those communities, they hear from various therapists and doctors that the way forward is integration. And often parts and people with multiple parts will hear that as, you want to get rid of my parts so that I'm just one single person. And I know sometimes for people, as they go through the journey of healing and processing the trauma and working with all the different parts, it can be really difficult to imagine being without of these parts. What does integration look like? And for each person, it will be different depending on how they want to live their life. Their parts have been really useful to them. Some people, they'll have a part that steps forward that knows exactly how to drive. And if you've got triggered little ones, then they're not going to have a clue how to drive. So it needs older, very functional parts to be able to come in and do these tasks. I've known people in the performance industry. It's a very specific part that goes on stage or compare shows. The other part of them might be very quiet, mild, unassuming, and doesn't want to be in the spotlight at all. And the thing is with parts is they all have a function. They all have a very specific role, and they do that role very, very well. And so when we're working with those parts, whether someone has an awareness of them or not, it's about understanding what the function of that part was, why it has to be that way, what are the qualities of that part, and the way that it manages to function. And for some people, it's, through someone working with them, allowing them to understand and know and have an awareness of what their different parts are, when different parts show up. And for everybody that shows up to be very welcome. And for people who have an awareness, they're aware of these parts, their voices, the memories that come with them. It's for them to get a better understanding of what is needed, how those parts don't have to feel so isolated and actually part of the full system. Because it is like a working system in there. And for people who have kind of clamoring parts and voices that's very chaotic, it can feel really difficult to function. And for some people, the constant switching makes just doing normal jobs very, very difficult. Often one of the kind of criteria for DID is, do you have gaps in your memory? Are there things that you don't remember doing? And are there things that you find that you've done that you have no memory of actually doing them? And, for those people, it's about having this understanding of who's in there, who's doing what experiences those parts have had, and what they need, both for their healing and then to be able to come and be a part of everything else. And for some people, they kind of strong personalities of these different parts, they sometimes just kind of mute down a little bit, and they'll just be aware of different parts kind of coming in and out. But you know, if you're quite far down the line on your healing journey, that can be a really useful thing. For some people, that's a really good sense of integration. Some people's parts, they have names, they've got very specific personalities, and our parts can have different genders. I know a lot of women with DID, and they have very particular male parts that are just that very different male energy to the one that they're used to. It's been made quite a controversial topic by Hollywood and a lot of documentaries and films that have been made. And those films have been made about very extreme cases. And usually they're brought to the attention of the public and the medical profession because something not good has happened, that one of their parts actually has nefarious intentions. But that is not typical of people with DID. They are not scary people. They're as scared often when this happens of themselves switching as anybody else would be with them. These things come up because they want to have healing. And yes, there might be parts of us that have had to experience some awful things and know how to do awful things, but those parts don't want to keep doing this. They want to come out and have a much simpler, more holistic, gentler life. It isn't something to be feared, and I know I hear a lot of therapists talk about, you know, try not to trigger the parts. If we work from a place of, you know, real fear of not wanting something to happen, well then our other parts aren't going to be able to show up. And we as therapists can't be afraid of what's happening. Even it's like, my goodness, what's going on? Don't understand. And we can bring our curiosity into that and begin wondering and communicating and working with whatever part shows up. Then we're in that therapeutic relationship with them. If we're standing back and being afraid of what's happening because we don't understand it, then we're not able to be helpful. And those parts, those people suffering with DID, are really going to get that message that there's something seriously wrong. And my question to people always is not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you. What's happened in your life? And for people with DID, all of these different parts, they hold the story. And the story might be quite awful once it starts coming up. But if, you know, it's awful for them, we have to be able to help them and to step into that therapeutic space with them. Use our curiosity, use our wondering, you know, wanting to get to know, wanting to find out what's happened and what is needed to heal. And the thing with DID is it is a spectrum, and you know, it's good for these communities to be able to talk about their experience with them. And it's through communities like that that it's going to help therapists like us, you know, those of you out there who are working with people with dissociation, trauma, DID. It's going to help us understand a lot more about it. So we have to be really willing to be a part of this and listen and learn, and not just follow a set of criteria decided by a panel of people that maybe haven't done a great deal of clinical work. You know, there's a lot of people that do research and things, fantastic, amazing for informing us. But if you haven't done the clinical work, then you don't know what it's like to be in that therapeutic relationship with someone. And so, you know, all of these things are wonderful and they have a real place in the world and can help people with DID really understand what's happening and what things work for some of them. And, you know, for some people it's quite a subtle experience. For some it's really dramatic and profoundly disturbing. But it's on a gradient, it's on a spectrum, and finding out, you know, where you feel in that spectrum is really, really important. So I hope that has helped demystify some of it. For me, it is a very, very real condition. It's rare, but it's not quite as rare as we think. And, you know, I'm sure there are therapists out there that have never experienced it, but maybe they've experienced it and actually missed it or not been aware of what's actually going on. So this is just to kind of open this up. Anybody got any questions or any comments to make, then, you know, stick them in the comments. I'm sure they'll be really, really helpful and useful, not just for me, but for everybody else reading them. So if you've enjoyed this video, if you found it interesting, helpful, then please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Okay, bye.